Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is brought to you by, well, you. If you want to learn how to support our show, go to patreon.com/laststandmedia.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Sacred Symbols Plus, your weekly Sacred Symbols supplement. I'm your host, Dustin, and we're here for a Hogwarts Legacy Spoilercast. And boy, am I joined by a stellar crew today, starting out with our guest, someone who I may have heard from a tweet was excited for this game. And we're going to talk just about the game today. Kara Lynne, welcome back to Sacred Symbols Plus. How are you?
I'm fantastic. I'm excited to talk about some Hogwarts Legacy today. I recently beat the game, so I'm just rearing to talk about it. I love it.
Yeah, we're happy to have you back to talk about the game. And yeah, I saw you streamed the whole game, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. And now you're on to Final Fantasy VII, I saw.
Yes, this is my first experience with Final Fantasy VII. So I never played the remake, or I never played the original. And so I just decided to jump into the remake. I did Crisis Core on PSP back in the day, a bit of it, but I never finished it. So I'm excited. It's so good already. Very invested in all the thirsty ladies.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. I don't know how far you are. Are you Tifa or I'm
Tifa so far.
Yeah. Okay, I didn't even need to say anyone else. You were okay, yeah.
Tifa, Aerith, Jessie. Jessie's the thirstiest.
Yes, that's true.
But Tifa's Tifa's good. Aerith's a little bit too pure so far.
Right. See, and that's the thing for me as a guy. When I tell people I'm like, oh, I like Tifa, they're like, oh, it's because of how she dresses, and and I'm like, no. Listen, Tifa is who Cloud's meant to be with. She's the childhood friend. It's what's meant to be. Anyway, we're getting a little off topic. Not that that's abnormal for this show, but we're also joined by our producer, Ben Smith. What's up, dude?
Hey, I recently got a promotion. I don't know if you saw. I know Colin gave you a promotion recently, but in the description for Constellation today, I'm now the executive producer.
I forgot to change that.
I know. I let you know, but I decided just to let it go because I figured it was a free promotion. So,
hey, I mean, I guess, I don't know. Colin's the one who originally wrote it.
Yeah.
You informed me and I just let it slip.
Yeah, that's fine.
I guess I should probably fix that, but maybe I won't. I don't know. You
can just write me a check for the difference between our salaries whenever you feel like it. It's fine. Sure. I can wait.
Yeah, we can make that. Yeah. We can make that happen.
Cool. Thanks.
So we are gathered here, of course, to talk about Hogwarts Legacy, a game that, at least for me, totally caught me off guard. I didn't really have high expectations for this game starting out, just because, not that I thought that Avalanche was a bad team by any means, but I didn't think they were the type of team to make this kind of game. And so it just totally surprised me. And so I want to start this show before we get into the patrons' questions, comments about the game. I just want to go around and see how everybody felt about this game. Maybe some background on your Potter history or whatever you want to call it, your Potter fandom. So Kara, go ahead and kick us off with that and overall wide thoughts about the game.
Exceeded my expectations.
Nice.
Absolutely exceeded my expectations. I consumed as little content as possible about it before going into it because I wanted that first impression. Like the Potterverse is one that I remember reading the first book in 5th grade. And it's 5th or 6th grade. I still remember sitting in the computer lab on the floor reading that book. It's just one of those that has just always stuck with me. And I've continued my love of that series to today. And so I have a whole little Harry Potter shrine over there, but we're not going to get to that today. But the game itself, they did so many different mechanics so well and so beautifully input into a game about a kid in wizard school. How do you think about that? The thought process and the passion that went into it, into the planning, was you can tell that there is a lot of love for the source material that went into it to me.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. Yeah, that's the thing is that I kept saying is just the attention to detail, the care for the world is amazing. Ben, I know you are a longtime Potter fan as well. So what are you thinking?
Yeah, I just for the background, I read the first. I was the kid who read everything in school, and when I say everything, I literally read so many books, like almost the entire library, that my teacher, my librarian, Mr. Adams, R.I.P., he would give me a budget every month to buy new books and hand me his catalog because he figured that I'd read everything, so I knew where the gaps were. And so I think it was about a month after Harry Potter came to the States, I read the first one. And then all of the rest of them, all the way up through when I was in, high school, maybe even, I can't remember when the last one came out, but I read all of them, right away. Was at some of the midnight releases. So I've been a huge fan since forever. And then, the newer movies, the Fantastic Beasts movies came out, and I was like, not my thing, but I'm still going to watch them. Like, they weren't very good, but I'm still going to watch them. And so when they announced this game, I saw the trailer the first time and thought, I don't know, I got to see more. And then I saw the next one, whenever they put out the next announcement, and I said, okay, lights out. I'm not looking at anything else. And I didn't until I played the game. So I was very excited for it. So just putting that bias out there, I was already assuming I was going to like it. And then once the common sentiment amongst the internet kind of came out that the game was good, I was totally in for sure.
I'm glad to hear you guys had a lot more optimistic attitude than me, for sure.
Just to be fair, I don't know that I thought the game was going to be good. I just knew I was going to play it.
Sure. Yeah. And that's
I'm right there with you on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
that
overachieved.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, I guess as far as my background, what's been really fun for me playing this game is that it made me remember that I really was a huge Harry Potter fan growing up, just in that it's not that I didn't like Harry Potter anymore. It just kind of had gone, it wasn't the forefront anymore of what I was thinking about. But I remember it had to have been 2001. My dad started reading me the books aloud because 2001, I would have been first grade. So he read the first few aloud to me, which was really cool. And then eventually reading them on my own. I remember one morning my dad coming home it was like I woke up and he came home and he had Order of the Phoenix. Like he went to the store that morning to buy it and get it. And of course, all the movies. I'm rewatching the movies now with my wife, Holly.
I just did that.
Nice. Yeah, dude. And it's been eye-opening. There are things that are better than I remember and things that I was like, it was a little better in my mind. But either way, it's crazy to think. I was telling her, I think I saw all these movies at least once in the theater. Mm-hmm. All 8 of them, multiple times in the theater. I've seen them multiple times since then. And so this game has just really reawakened this fandom in me for this IP. And so I'm rewatching the movies. I'm really thinking about rereading the books as well. And as far as the game itself, I was just nice. Yeah, you're right on here. Deck, ready to go. Nice. I have all the hardcovers now. I think that was one of those things that when Holly and I got married, that it just suddenly now I owned because she owned them. I'm like, nice. Now I got the full hardcover set. So
that's one thing I've really been wanting to invest in is a hardcover set of the whole series.
Yeah. Oh, they're so nice. The covers, I love it.
The other thing
that was
really
my
nice.
Original one. This is the one I've had since I was little.
Yeah. Oh, nice.
So yeah, this is an old book.
Very nice.
In addition to the regular books, there's I don't know if they've got them all out yet or not, but there's the illustrated ones.
Yes,
that are hardcover.
I've been looking at those. Those look so good.
I have the first 2, and they're really nice. I don't know if they've put them all out yet, but they're really nice.
I look at those every time I go into a bookstore because, like, I just was in a Books A Million the other day, and I saw one, and I'm like, man, I really want that.
Yeah,
like, I really need to get those.
They're awesome.
Those are sick. Maybe that's something that maybe is better to hold off until they're all out, and then you can spend like $300 on a box set or something. But at least then it's all at once, and then you can just get it over with. But let's go ahead and dive in. Since we've been waxing poetic about this IP and about this game, I wanted to start out with a very poignant question, I thought, from Timothy Martin, who says, "Hey, team, after finally completing Hogwarts, would you recommend this game to someone who is not a big Harry Potter fan? I'm a grumpy old man, and Pottermania helped when I was a little old to jump in. The game looks like it has decent gameplay, but I'm very much on the fence." So
100% yes.
Oh, 100% yes. Just okay, go ahead.
You do not have to know the Potterverse to fully appreciate this game. Like, it is a whole story of itself. There are little Easter eggs that those of us will really like pick out and find, like the Dark Tower at the very top where Sirius was kept in Prisoner of Azkaban. You find the Chamber of Secrets. Whenever you're Hufflepuff, you go to Azkaban. So there are things that, of course, a Potter fan are going to love and appreciate, but you do not have to know anything about the Hogwarts universe to absolutely just be completely immersed into this story.
Yeah, Ben, what do you think?
I think so. I was recommending it to people who were not Harry Potter universe fans. I will admit that it is. I was starting to get some questions from a few friends, like, "What is this?" And I was like, "Okay, that just instantly made sense to me as a fan of the series." But I guess it makes sense if you know nothing about the Harry Potter universe that you wouldn't know what that is. And they do explain some of that stuff in there. But I think that it's still a great game for anybody who isn't familiar. I was telling our buddy Brandon, who I think he's watched maybe a movie or two, but he's not a fan, that he just loves RPGs. And I was like, this is just a good RPG. You don't have to be a fan of the series.
Right. That's kind of how I was feeling too. You mentioned, I specifically thought of maybe they explain it. I can't remember, but pretty early on, there's the part with the pensive where it's like, I don't know if anyone would have any idea. He just like stuck his face in something and now he's in another world. Right. So there's a few things I think you're right that it might be a little jarring if you don't know what that is. But from the context of not knowing the movies, you might be a tiny bit confused about a few things, but I think it's well worth jumping into because, like you said, Ben, it is a really solid RPG. And I think, too, the thing that I would recommend to people is that this is just a fun world to explore and see,
it's
particularly
massive.
Yeah, shockingly massive. I remember booting this game up and seeing the world map and being like, wow.
Yeah.
So much bigger than I expected.
Yes, that's what she said.
Yeah, exactly. That is true. So, yeah, I was just, I feel like if you're interested, this is a great way to dip your toes into that world and check it out. And like I said, the world, it's crazy. It's awesome how they were able to lovingly craft it. But let's move on to another warm-up question here about some of our overall thoughts from Brad Wilson, who says, "Excited for the Spoilercast. I have had a few game-breaking bugs and had to do a few different workarounds to continue playing. I play on PlayStation 5 and was wondering if you had any technical issues. I also think the game is equally beautiful and last-gen looking, if that makes sense. Thanks. Excited for the episode." So for me, at least, when I'm putting together these Spoilercasts, I always want to make sure that there is at least some attention to the technical aspects and the fidelity of the game, as I think that sometimes that is absolutely should be applauded, and other times there's our issues. And I think he's right. This game for me was really high and somewhat low at points as far as its technical aspects. I mentioned Hogwarts, like the ability to just walk in and out with some minor loading here and there. Crazy cool, flying around. The fact that you can get it at 60 FPS most of the time, pretty good. There are some buggy aspects of the game, but overall, I didn't feel like it was anything that was worthy of any kind of controversy. It's not like a cyberpunk, far from a cyberpunk situation or anything like that. So, Kara, did you have any like major technical issues with the game?
I only had one bug the entire time I played. The entire, I think I put like 60 hours into it. I had one bug, and it was in the Haunted Hogsmeade shop quest. It was the final boss. That was it. my game crashed, but it picked right back up at the very beginning of the fight. That was the only technical issue I had through my entire playthrough.
Ben, how was your experience on and yeah, you were playing on PlayStation 5 as well, right?
I played on PlayStation 5 as well.
I was playing on PlayStation as well.
Yeah. Yeah, so other than, I mean, occasionally you have some like, weird lighting and a little bit of pop in here and there as far as like, super deep technical stuff. But overall, I had almost nothing. It wasn't until, and much like Kara, I think I had between 65 and 70 hours. I got to go back and do the only thing I need to do for the platinum is to go back and do things as the other houses, which I will do eventually, but I just kind of lost steam after I finished everything, like 100% in one playthrough. I was like, I don't feel the desire to go back, but I will eventually. But I think the only real actual issue I had was one time I was flying around in one of the little towns outside of Hogwarts, and my broom would not let me land. And not just like, sometimes if you're trying to land on like a slanted area, it won't let you land. There was one time where it just would not let me land. I flew like very far trying to get to land, and eventually I had to just fast travel, and that fixed it. But that was the only issue I had. I did crash on me one time, but in fairness, I think it was my fault because I was just spamming inputs.
I did this. That's what happened with mine too.
And I think the game just couldn't hand it.
So.
Yeah. So, I mean, not that the game should crash either way, but I do think it was user-induced to some extent. I did see a lot of, because I was interested in the collectibles and trying to get everything, I did see some talk about some trophies being bugged and stuff at first, at least on PlayStation side, which obviously is a huge thing for those people who are diehard about trophies. But I didn't have any issues with that. There were a couple I was like, am I going to get this? And then sure enough, it popped and it was no problem. So I thought it was overall pretty solid. And everybody complains about the loading in the castle. I never felt like I waited more than half a second for the doors to load. So
Agreed.
For me, that's fine. That's not a big deal.
Yeah. I was overall, I have to applaud Avalanche just in that I love games that give you so many options about how you want the game to perform.
Yeah.
There's ray tracing mode, there's fidelity mode, there's performance mode, there's 120 hertz screen mode that's like the 40 FPS. You can unlock the frame rate. There's just so many options. And I think that particularly I saw that there were some issues with like the ray tracing was a little bit inconsistent, but they've already patched that. And Ben, the other thing I got to applaud them for is just that they identified trophy bugs and they got ahead of it and said, hey, we know some of this isn't working for you. We're going to put out a patch. And when the patch comes out, it will retroactively give you the trophy.
Right. Yeah.
Just that level of communication is so essential for the people that care about that.
Oh,
Whereas
yeah.
other games, there are some games that came out last year that you still can't pop or inconsistent trophy popping. Like not just at least let people know or something. But so yeah, overall, pretty technically sound, I would say overall, with some issues. But
I have a question for you guys.
for sure, go for it.
What houses were you guys?
Slytherin.
Oh. Yeah, Ben, I wanted to ask you about that because in leading up to the game, I did the Pottermore thing where you do the house test and I learned more about the houses and stuff like that. And I thought, I kind of feel bad for people that are Slytherin because they get the bad rep, your founder kind of racist, little caring about the pure blood and stuff like that. But that doesn't mean that everyone in Slytherin's a bad person. So tell me more about this.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what else there is to say, really. I mean, it's funny because what did you say?
I said you're evil. That's what. No.
So I also took the Pottermore quiz, I don't know, 7 or 8 years ago, probably, and it was still attached to my account. And so that is the first option because the game basically tells you what's first. And I think if you're connected to your account, it gives you that option first. And you can tell it no and choose whichever house you want if you want to. But I just went with Slytherin because that's what I landed in. And part of that was just that I assumed that there would be a little more customization to the house you're in or to the decisions you're making in as far as your communications with the NPCs and everything go. But there really isn't. I mean, internally, there seemed to be no like, oh, those dirty Slytherins or anything like that. Like that's certainly there in the books. And I think that when they were written, that was much more about like not judging people just based on their whatever, in this case, their house, but judging people based on their immutable attributes, essentially. But I didn't really feel like what house you were affected the game as far as your interactions too much. I know that the common rooms are obviously different. One of the first couple quests are slightly different, but overall, I didn't really feel it actually didn't affect the game as much as I would have liked it to. Like, your character never references like, oh, Slytherin, that's where, that's the leader of my house or whatever. Like, I think most of the dialogue is almost exactly the same no matter which house you are.
Right.
There are a couple of quests that are different between houses, which I thought was really fascinating.
Yeah.
Which I think it's only that one quest,
right? Which
is whenever you're going to Jackdaw's tomb.
Yes.
But I think that's the only real difference that I saw. And other than the common rooms, I thought it was really cool. That it didn't deviate too much, but it still give you a little bit of variety.
Right.
Right. For me, I'm a Hufflepuff, but here's the thing. This is what confused me a little bit. When I took the Pottermore test years ago, I was Hufflepuff. I thought, it's been so long, I'm going to create a new account and do it again. And I was Ravenclaw the second time. And then I was thinking about it, and I was like, I feel like I can kind of be like Harry and I can choose. Like, I'm somewhere in between. Yeah. I was thinking about it, I was like, I want to be Hufflepuff because they get a bad rep. People go, oh, Hufflepuff, they're the kind of stupid ones that no one other house will take. Like, no, these are, they're hardworking, they're loyal, and I don't know. I felt like that's just where I fit in more. But I love their common room is like this really cozy. Mm-hmm. It's like not quite underground, but it has like this real cozy feeling to it. So, Kara, what about you?
I am a Ravenclaw.
Hell yeah.
I love me some Ravenclaw. I did the Pottermore test back in the day. I actually did it while I was standing in line for a ride at the Wizarding World Park at Universal.
Oh, nice.
And I was like, oh, okay. So figured out like my house, my wand, my Patronus, and all that kind of stuff while I was in line for it. And I will say that Ravenclaw kind of drew the short stick whenever it came to extra quests. Because I mean, Gryffindor, you have Nearly Headless Nick and the Headless Hunt. And Hufflepuff, you have where you go to Azkaban. Did Slytherin do anything?
Slytherin, you find Jackdaw in a cave. Like, it's so boring.
So no one else went to Azkaban except for...
No, just Hufflepuff.
Oh, man, I'm so happy about that. That was one of the coolest parts of the game for me.
I think that's one of the only quests that is different.
Well, that is the only one that's different, is that particular Jackdaw's Tomb quest.
Dang. That's crazy.
So, like, we went to an owlery and found a little statue for Jackdaw. That's it.
I literally went to a cave, and I had to defeat some monsters on the way. And I just walked in the cave, and there was Jackdaw's spirit, and that was it. I started the Gryffindor playthrough for the trophies, and I was like, I don't remember playing that. Like, I didn't realize until I was 70 hours into the game that it was different. I was like, was I asleep when I played this part where I'm like smashing pumpkins to find? It was weird. But
my husband played as a Gryffindor, so I noticed I was like, wait, I didn't get to do that.
Right.
I didn't get to go walk around with Nearly Headless Nick. Like, I want to do that.
Dude, I didn't know. I knew there were different quests and different things you did, but I think, man, it feels like that's kind of crazy. They totally built and modeled out at least a small part of Azkaban and then locked it off to probably the least popular house, I would assume,
that's replayability, though.
That is true. Yeah, that is true. Now, I mentioned Hogwarts itself, the castle, earlier, and so that's where I want to lead this next. And so I have a write-in from Nathan Densley, who says, "Hello, Ben, Kara, and Dustin. Hogwarts Castle is one of the coolest locations in video games. So many hidden gems and cool random actions popping up. What is your favorite spot in the castle? And I know you, Ben, you are going to try to say a place that isn't in the castle to be different. Don't you dare, you big bear." Now, Nathan, I find this a little offensive, kind of making some kind of assumption about Ben, some kind of hipster thing. But Ben, I will throw this, since you're called out, I'll throw this to you first about your overall thoughts about Hogwarts. And if you want to, make fun of Nathan in any way, please do.
Yeah, I'll make fun of the people all day. That's fine. First of all, I'm on like one piece of content every 3 months. I don't I don't know why you think you know that I want to do something that's somewhere different. With that said, I think Hogsmeade. No, I'm just kidding. I think that my favorite spots were the classrooms and the professors' like studies, like their rooms, because they're all so different. Obviously, like, you know, you've got all the halls and everything, and every hall is a little bit different. It almost feels like there's not, as inside the castle at least, like there's not many reused assets. I'm sure some of the portraits and stuff on the walls that I didn't pay super close attention to are similar, but every professor's classroom is different. Every professor's office is a little bit different, showing some of their different characteristics. So I definitely think those were my favorite spots in the castle. I think all of the castle is really cool, but those kind of stood out to me as being like they showed the flavor, the character of the particular personalities.
Yeah. Kara, how do you feel about Hogwarts, and what are some of your favorite locations?
I think one of my favorites was really getting to experience the headmaster's office for the first time.
Yeah.
I thought that was really cool, getting to go find like the sorting hat and the admittance quill and book. Like, I thought that was really cool. One of my favorite little interactions that I remember seeing was the two suits of armor,
The fight.
and there's this little, like, whenever they go and like smash him, and there's this little kick at the end that I cackled every single time I watched that. Like, I would sit there and I would forget what I was doing anytime I saw the interaction going, because the animation on it is so good.
Yeah.
And like there's just little bits of like fluidity that really make it not seem like a suit of armor.
Mm-hmm.
But I think Headmaster Black, his office was one of my favorites. And then I was one of those, I had to go and search for all the little Easter eggs. So I found the Chamber of Secrets down in Slytherin's bathroom, and like I mentioned, the Dark Tower and all those little places is something I really enjoyed going to find.
Yeah.
That was the thing for me early on, especially in this game, is that I just found myself running around the castle, not really accomplishing much of anything other than finding pages and stuff like that. But I just wanted to see everything. And what I think is so fun is just some of the smaller details or things that they did that I don't want to say they weren't necessary, but they just added so much. There's like the weird hallway that stinks, and you see the
pungent hallway.
The pungent hallway, and you get a little lore bit that says something like, someone did this at some point, and they don't know how to get rid of it, and so it just kind of is what it is. And I love that. I love that stuff. How it just adds like a little bit of extra lore that maybe isn't totally necessary. But the other cool thing I will say about the castle is how even though it's not exactly the same as the movies, which I watched a whole YouTube video about how obviously the castle changes in each movie. And so the castle in the game is some amalgamation of all of that. But even still, I love how it provided context to me about where, as I'm watching the movies now, different places and where things are. And some of it is even obvious in the movies, but I just didn't realize. Particularly, I love the part of the castle that is the clock tower. I love the big pendulum and how you can go up in the rafters and stuff like that.
Do that a lot in one of the movies. In one of the movies, you're in it was Prisoner of Azkaban.
Yeah.
Like, it was multiple times, like, you're coming out of the clock tower. And I was like, yep.
Yeah. Dude, yeah, that whole courtyard there. But the weird connecting the dots moment for me is that the hospital wing is behind where the clock is.
Yeah.
And when I was playing the game, I thought, they didn't know where to put this, and they put this here. And then in Prisoner of Azkaban, you can tell that it's behind the clock tower. So it's one of those things that is simple that they made it like the movie, but the way that it made me appreciate that consistency was so cool in a lot of ways. But and just like the little things too, like you can tell that there's the wooden bridge that leads down to where Hagrid's hut is, and then of course there's like the owl tower that's like slightly outside the castle. so many of those different little things are so incredibly cool
and iconic.
Yes, absolutely.
The Quidditch pitch felt a lot closer to the castle to me than I felt like it was in the books or movies. That may be just a misunderstanding on my part, but
yeah. I do remember the Quidditch pitch being across a river, I think. Because there's that whole battle in Deathly Hallows Part 2, where like they have that barrier and the Quidditch pitch is outside of the barrier,
right?
Because all the Death Eaters are destroying and it's on fire and stuff. So I do think that it was a little further away in the movies than it was in the game.
Yeah. Oh, one other thing I wanted to say, because you guys touched on it, is just the small, I guess we'll say events that you see going on around the castle. There's the one hall where all the portraits have a band and they'll just be playing music every once in a while. You'll see some students do some crazy stuff too, whether like one of them's like walking on the walls. Yeah.
Right.
Or
the levitating hat.
What is the thing? It's in Chamber of Secrets, the thing that yells at, it's like a letter.
Howler.
Howler. Yeah, you can see a couple of those. Just so many fun things. And for the most part, those things do not repeat themselves too often. Obviously, did you guys see they fixed the lady?
Oh my God, yes.
The lady with the flu powder that says the same thing over and over.
I would shit talk her all the time. And shut up.
She's off on another adventure. You're like, yes, I am on another adventure. I'm always on an adventure. I saw that they fixed that though.
They did.
They dialed that down, which is good.
When was that they fixed that?
Like the day after I finished playing the game.
Well, the reason I'm asking is because I noticed, obviously that was an annoying thing. And also, I don't know if there's anything in here about that, but whenever you would go to Hogsmeade, you always say the same line, is there any place more cozy or whatever? And I mean,
all roads lead to Hogsmeade.
All roads lead to Hogsmeade, and then the other one too. And I noticed that towards the end of my playthrough, that felt like it was happening less, but I don't think that was before the patch, or I think that was before the patch. So I don't know if it was just my perception or I don't know.
I have one other question I would like to ask you guys.
Do it. Yeah.
So out of all the field guides that you found, do you have a favorite?
I like the spot where somebody got blasted and there was like that outline on the wall.
In the Great Hall?
Yeah.
I think I already touched on it with the hallway, the cursed hallway. That's stinky. What was it called again?
The pungent
hallway.
Pungent
something.
Yeah. I don't know why that was just so fun, because that's something that I don't think is in the movie or books.
No, it's not
at all. And I like that ability that they obviously were very, very faithful in so many ways, but obviously you have to fill things out as well. And so instead of just having a normal hallway with more moving portraits and stuff like that, they did their own thing that very much made sense in the world of the castle.
And there's that portrait of that guy in there who's just constantly miserable because he's in the pungent hallway or the passageway. Yeah.
Just, I mean, can you blame him? Really?
No. I think my favorite was the bathtub that was locked up.
Yes.
The bathtub that was locked up because there's kids that wouldn't bathe during their owls. It was this cursed bathtub.
Oh, I remember that. I totally forgot about that. Yeah, that's awesome. So, Ben, you mentioned Quidditch. And as our last warm-up thing here, I have a question from Jacob who says, hello, beautiful podcasters. Will there be a Quidditch-based DLC in the future? It seems like it was a planned part of the game, but it was taken out during development. Sorry if this was asked before. And yes, this was a common question about Quidditch being missing and how we felt about that. This is kind of one of the big contentions around the game is this Quidditch stuff. And I am very curious about where they were with it, because I think it seems obvious if you're making a game in the Harry Potter world, you should have Quidditch, but it's very intentional right out the gate, letting you know, this doesn't have Quidditch in it. And I think they recently said they're not doing DLC at all. So I'm guessing that's not part of the, situation. But Kara, how'd you feel about no Quidditch in the game?
I suck at broom riding in the first place, so I'm okay with it. I was so bad at doing the little, I actively avoided dealing with that guy, the broom guy.
Yeah.
So I didn't have to go do the time trials because I'm so bad at them. I'm so bad at time trials, and I was not good at driving a broom.
Yeah, fair enough. Ben, was this a disappointment for you?
I don't think it was a disappointment. I think it would have enhanced the experience for me had it been there. I don't get the impression, and this is purely speculation on my part, I don't get the impression it was part of their initial planning. Like maybe very early on they thought we should do this, but there's so much stuff, so many people talking about Quidditch and how it's not there, and there are notes all around talking about the cancellation of the Quidditch season and everything like that. That seems like something. Story. Yeah.
With whenever you're as Professor Black.
Mm-hmm. It seems like something that would have had to been planned intentionally from an early stage. And maybe I'm wrong about how the development works, but I just don't think it was. I don't think it was part of that. I think it would have been fun. I don't know that the pitch was big enough for it to really work. Like it almost has to be a separate like location, like almost like a dungeon. But I don't, because they've said there won't be any DLC, I don't think it'll be coming. I think it is a missed opportunity in some sense, because there's no one who's played this game and liked it that wouldn't buy it probably. But I can just imagine that that's a game in and of itself. There's so many moving parts to that. And so I wasn't disappointed, but I think it would have been cool if it was there. For sure.
Yeah. How I felt about it is just that they really nailed when you fly around on a broom in the open world in a large space. Mm-hmm. And if you think about Quidditch, there's people, you're turning on a dime,
right.
And Quidditch is already, if you think about it, a game that doesn't seem I mean, it's not physically possible because you're riding on a broomstick, but there's people like throwing things and catching them from really far distances, right. Not only on a flat plane, but up in the air. Mm-hmm. And then of course you're dealing with the bludgers, right? That can knock mm-hmm. you off and stuff. I don't know how it would even really work and be fun to do, particularly from a control aspect. So I understand that probably they were looking at it and thought we can make this work, maybe, but it's going to have to require a totally different way to control the broom, or they're going to have to do it in a way. I think in the old Harry Potter games, Quidditch was basically what the trials are in this game, where you're just kind of going through some hoops, and then eventually
on PS2 there was a Quidditch game, like a full out Quidditch game.
Yeah, I'm curious about that.
Yeah.
I've never played that.
Did you have positions for each of the different types of players? Like, or were you the seeker? Were you the keeper?
Yeah.
It's pretty interesting to me on how they could mechanically get that to work and to not have to control each and every one of the players. Like the seeker obviously has to go find the snitch, and that's got like one of the more like important parts of the match. So
yeah,
there's another piece. This isn't really represented anywhere else, so maybe we can talk about it here for a minute. But sure. You start Hogwarts as a fifth year, and mm-hmm. I don't, unless I totally missed it, I don't think they ever fully explain why you're coming in as a fifth year. They mentioned that other people have done that in the past, but Quidditch seems like one of those things where you kind of need to already know how to play by the time you're a fifth year in order to be on the team. So like it almost fits narratively too, that you wouldn't even play Quidditch. So why have a Quidditch season? I don't know, but I wondered about that. If you guys noticed, like, why do you start as a fifth year, other than the very practical reason of you don't learn a lot of those spells until your later years in class?
Yeah,
I don't remember.
Yeah.
I don't actually remember if they touched on that.
Yeah, I remember it's obviously acknowledged that all your teachers are saying, oh, this is very uncommon for a fifth year. You have a lot to catch up on. And I was wondering,
was it her age or your age, or if you just came into magic at a later age? Like,
yeah, I don't think they explain it.
I didn't know.
Yeah,
mm-hmm.
I was trying to think from a development standpoint that if they were looking at this like, okay, well, if this works out, maybe we'll do 3 games.
Yeah.
And so you have 5, 6, 7 years, and the final game is the final year at Hogwarts, which we'll get into later about what we want from potential sequels. But yeah, I'm okay with the decision. I think I would have liked to see a little more explanation. Maybe it's out there and you guys can let us know in the comments, but I feel the same way as both of you in that it's kind of just told that you're a fifth year and you're joining. It's like, okay, cool. Yeah. So moving on to the story. And now I have to tell you guys, we had over 70 write-in questions, and very few of them were about the story itself, which kind of surprised me. And the two that I pulled definitely are more negative on, we'll say, the main story overall. And so we can kind of cover the main story and some of the side quests as well here. But before I go to the questions, how do you guys feel about the story? Obviously, we have non-Rowling or Rowling stories from Harry Potter out there, and this one, I'm sure she had some kind of influence or something. I'm sure she was involved in one way or another, but this is definitely Avalanche in some ways. I don't want to call it fanfic because I feel like that makes it sound bad, but it's a totally new thing that they wrote to fit in this world set 100 years prior to most of what we know. And so, Kara, I'm curious how you felt about this story of goblins and ancient magic and, you know, these trials. How did it fare for you?
I personally really enjoyed the story. I thought it was a nice way to be a little bit more unique, and kind of really showing, like, because I mean, they always talk about goblins and like in the Harry Potter series. So having a little bit more of the background between like the division between the goblins and the wizarding folk was a really interesting view on it. And I personally really enjoyed the way that they took the story. I mean, it was one of those, it was different. It was not just a retelling of the Harry Potter world. Because I mean, we've had that in previous video games before. I like that it wasn't Harry Potter. I like that it wasn't Fantastic Beasts. I like that it was its own thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have to agree with that it definitely could have been a much easier situation to either not necessarily just do one of those two stories, but mirror them in one way or another. And this definitely felt like more of its own thing. But before I say anything more, Ben, please, how did you feel about this main story?
I thought it was serviceable for sure. I didn't think it was anything that blew me away. It certainly wasn't, you know, outlandish in any sense. But part of that, I will admit, probably comes from like being so attached to Harry's storyline and feeling like this isn't as good as Harry's storyline, so therefore it's not good, which I don't think. Hey, dog. Is that a dog? I can't. It's really fuzzy on here when we're recording, so I can't 100% see, but I saw a tail and I was like, dog.
Typically, he doesn't walk into my office if the door is cracked.
That's all right. We like dogs.
Yeah. We love dogs.
This is Gus. Gus is my boy.
Anyway, so I don't know that I thought it was particularly strong, but I thought it was certainly serviceable. The game wasn't about the story for me, especially once I started playing it. I was curious about the story, obviously, before I started playing it, but I thought it was good. The only thing I didn't really jive with, I guess, too much was that so much of it is centered around ancient magic. And maybe the words ancient magic are uttered in the books, but I don't remember it. And I just felt like this is before Harry Potter's time. I feel like if ancient magic played this big of a part in something that happened in Hogwarts history, that we would have heard about it in the original works. So I don't know. I didn't mind it as far as a gameplay mechanic, but I did feel like the fact that this entire story and like the fate of the wizarding world was based on it seems like it should have existed elsewhere in the universe. And I just didn't feel like that's ever been the case. So that kind of took away from it a little bit for me as not a lore purist, but certainly a lore enjoyer. But I like the story. I think it was fine because I didn't care as much about the story as I did about the gameplay.
Yeah. For me, I don't know. I guess I'm somewhere between the two of you in that it didn't bother me that, the ancient magic isn't something that's really mentioned later. I like that it kind of brought this new element to the world that maybe we hadn't thought about. And maybe it's one of those things just in that with this being 100 years prior, which I guess there's stuff they talk about stuff older than that in Harry Potter all the time. So it would make, I don't know, it's somewhat believable and unbelievable to me that it's just kind of like, oh, well, that's not really a thing anymore. I will say the thing that sticks out to me the most of the main story outside the plot, which I think the plot is fine. I think that, Ranrock is kind of this interesting character that has like this grudge and wants to unlock this secret trove of magic. And also this element of the ancient magic being able to take people's pain away, I thought was a really interesting ethical question that is brought up. But I love the different, I guess, the elements of the story. Particularly, I really like Professor Fig is cool. I felt like that was a very Harry Potter thing to do, that you've got this one teacher that you can rely on, and you're kind of buddies, but and have this interesting relationship. I thought was really cool. And as far as I guess we can jump into some of the side quests here, and I'll read it one of these write-ins here from Nuke Dukem, who says, "What's up, Dustin, Ben, and Kara Lynne? Did you guys find the main quest much less engaging than the side quests? Some of the side quests were absolute bangers, such as Haunted Hogsmeade and all 3 of the companion quest lines. I found myself not really wanting to advance the main quest at all, but would rather do all the side content possible. Thanks for all the hard work, and remember, sometimes it seems all roads lead to Hogsmeade." So, yeah, I saw this comment a lot in that, and I think a lot of times that because the side content was actually so good in this game that people kind of like, oh, I didn't want to do the main quest. It's like, no, I think that just goes to show how shockingly good the side content was, because we're used to so many games where the side content is filler and not something you really want to play. But I found myself that the side content was really awesome, particularly Sebastian, if you want to say it like they do, were really, really interesting. Kara, are you in agreement here?
Oh man, that one was an emotional roller coaster.
Yeah.
Like, oh my gosh, I did not expect that quest. I did not expect Sebastian's quest to hit as hard as it did, because it hit like there's that moral, like, oh gosh, what is the word? Kind of battle within like Ominous, who's like, hey, I know dark magic is bad, but I also don't want to like separate from my best friend. Like, he means a lot to me, but I also know this isn't a really good thing. And then like, I don't know how like into spoilers we want to get into, but
go for it.
Man.
It's a spoilercast. Go for it. Yeah.
Oh my God. I tattled on Sebastian because I cannot believe that moment where he killed his uncle was heart-wrenching. Like, I did not see that coming. Absolutely did not see that one coming. I think of the 3 main side quests that you had, his was the most impactful. I definitely, there was a lot of more of that moral conflict that you didn't experience with the other 2 side quests. I also, with Haunted Hogsmeade, I didn't know what I was getting into because I am a coward, but people kept on like, hey, have you done the Haunted Hogsmeade quest? Have you done this quest? Have you done this quest? I'm like, no, like, I haven't checked it out. They're like, oh, you should play it. I was like, oh, okay, I'll go give it a shot. Yeah, that was a completely different experience. I think one of my clips went viral, and it was the spider jump scare.
Yeah.
And oh man, that quest was good too. That was a completely out of left field. Had like, and that was a DLC exclusive for PlayStation,
which I didn't realize when I played it at first.
Yeah,
I was like, this is awesome. And I was talking to somebody who played on PC, and they were like, what? And I was like, never mind.
Yeah. Well,
it'll get there eventually, but it was timed exclusive for PS5. But those were my 2 side quests that really, really stayed with me.
Ben, I want to throw this over to you. I just want to quickly say, Haunted Hogsmeade, that was the second most popular write-in of people asking us if we played this quest and how we felt about it. So many people this quest resonated with, which is crazy. I mean, not really good. I don't like these types of things. I think it sucks that the people on Xbox and PC aren't able to play this quest. But from a business perspective for Sony, they really locked down something awesome, because normally when you have these like platform exclusive quests and stuff, it's usually something stupid and small or forgettable, but it's a marketing point when they're trying to sell the game. But this quest was really, really special. And Ben, it was you who I initially thought that the Dark Arts mission was the PlayStation mission. I was confused. That's actually the deluxe edition exclusive. And I was like, oh yeah, the PlayStation mission wasn't very good. And Ben, you were like, what? So Ben, you told me to like, no, you got to do the one where you own the shop in Hogsmeade. So Ben, I'll let you take it from here, because I know you love that quest as well.
Yeah, I thought it was really good, and mostly because I was totally not expecting it. I mean, when you find the beginning of that quest, you're like, oh, wow, I think I was 30 plus hours in, because I was doing so much side stuff. I was like, wow, a whole new mechanic is opening up. I'm going to be able to run my own shop and stuff. Obviously, that's not what it is, and it's just a horror quest in the middle of it. But I thought it was really good, and I agree that it sucks. But I will say that this is one instance where the marketing kind of doesn't really do the justice. A lot of times, and Dustin, there is probably audio of both you and I saying this a year or more ago on different areas, but where we were talking about exclusive quests, and we were like, oh yeah, well, you just get a quest, and then in 2 weeks it's going to be open to everybody, whatever. It's just, it's just an extra thing to sell the game. No, this was like PlayStation worked some magic in order to get this quest specifically, I think, because again, I think it sucks, but like, if you know about this quest on the PlayStation version, it is enough for me to say, like, that's where I would play the game. And I'm primarily a PC player if I can help it. And for this one, for whatever reason, I played it on PlayStation. I'm really glad I did because of that. Obviously, like Kara said, it'll come to those other platforms later, but I thought it was great. As far as the companion quest lines, I enjoyed all of them, but definitely Sebastian was
they have a very specific Sebastian way to say it.
was my favorite for sure. It hits home in a lot of ways. Well, not like a personal thing, but like it definitely makes you think, and it introduces a lot of those ethical questions. And I think we have a question later about certain curses and stuff like that, and that like brings those elements into the game. And yeah, I didn't find them to be like, I like them more than the main quest necessarily. It was just that I was getting to them because my reason for doing all the side stuff before I would progress to the next thing, like I made sure I had every side quest done before I progressed to the next story quest, just because I wanted to play the game as long as possible and didn't want it to end. And I know myself, a lot of times if I finish in an RPG, a main quest, I don't go back and do all the side stuff. And so I wanted to make sure that I did, because I just thought the world was so cool. So I think that the side quests were awesome. And they were, if they weren't better than the main quest, I don't think, but they were certainly as good. And I didn't feel like I was wasting time doing side quests, because they were additive to the story rather than just, a throwaway.
Yeah, definitely. Ben, I'll stick with you on this, because you just touched on this, and we're kind of moving into some gameplay stuff now. And this is exactly goes in part with what we were just talking about. This is from Kamza115, who says, "Hello, folks. Hope you're all doing well. What are your thoughts on Avalanche's decision to exclude any kind of morality system from the game? Personally, I feel it really hurt the game, particularly when it came to Sebastian's storyline. It would have made more of an impact if there's actually some consequences to learning and using the unforgivable curses. Although, I must admit, some of the shit you can pull off makes using Avacadabra look tame by comparison. Why just kill a goblin when you can turn him into an explosive barrel and then launch him at his friends? Thanks, and keep up the good work." I love the mention of the turning people into an explosive
So
barrel. It's definitely an awesome move. So, Ben, you were mentioning about this quest line and how you said some of it hits home and stuff like that. But really, it doesn't, I mean, there are some decisions, as Kara was mentioning, whether you can rat him out or kind of like cover for him or whatever. There are some decisions, but in the greater scheme of things, when we're talking about unforgivable curses, there's really no issue. In fact, I would say when you're playing the game, it is in your best interest to learn all these curses, even if you don't consider yourself a dark wizard or whatever kind of roleplay you want to do, just because they're very, very helpful later on when there's like 3 or 4 trolls at once and you can do one spell to kill them all. So Ben, how do you feel about this lack of morality system in the game?
It's another one of those things, kind of like the Quidditch for me, where I don't feel that not having a morality system detracted from the game, but I do feel like having one would have increased my enjoyment. I think about things like, Fable, for instance, where being good or bad definitely impacts how people react to you. Where in Hogwarts, like, you're standing there in front of Poppy, the sweetest little lady in the world, and you're like, you used the killing curse on someone, and she's like, oh, someone's not afraid of the dark arts. And I'm like, I would have been freaked out if like my buddy just pulled out this, unforgivable curse in front of me. So I feel like it almost would have been better if they didn't have them respond at all to using them, or took some sort of narrative turn where those weren't unforgivable yet at that point or something like that. I don't know. But I definitely think that it's funny that you can just like, chuck a goblin off the side of a hill and let them fall into the water 1,000 feet below.
You're slamming them on the ground.
You're slamming them on the ground.
It's brutal.
But
it was some of the most satisfying combat too.
Yeah.
Just putting them out of their misery immediately is unforgivable somehow. So I don't know. I don't think that it hurt the game, but I think that it would have made it better had they had more of an impact one way or another. And I don't know what that would have looked like, but of course you guys can answer, but do either of you guys know if you don't learn those curses with Sebastian, can you learn them later? Or is that's the only time you can choose to? Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I didn't figure out until it was too late after I turned in Sebastian that I couldn't learn Avada Kedavra.
Yeah.
After that, I was like, dang.
Bummer. I think you can still use
turn
it.
Him in.
You can still use it the dark arts
yes, in the trials.
Yeah, the trials or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, that was the first time I got to was in the Forbidden Forest. I think there's a trial where it has already selected spells for you to use, and the unforgivable curses were some of them.
Yeah.
I was like, this isn't my layout.
Right.
So I guess on the flip side then, Kara, you, despite the lack of this morality system, still played it almost as if there was one, staying. Well, I guess you didn't learn the killing curse, but did you learn the other curses, and how do you feel about this? Did it impact the experience for you in any way, the way this, the morality was handled?
I don't think I did learn the other 2 curses. I wanted to learn all 3 of them, but I don't think mine is I wanted all of the spells. I wanted that full thing completely. I didn't want anything dimmed out anymore. But I think it would have been a lot more fun if I could have had that final curse. I think it would have been fun. But
it has a very long cooldown, which I guess it should.
Does.
Yeah.
But there are traits and stuff that you can use that kind of help with cooldowns and that kind of stuff. So it kind of like counteracts it a little bit. But I played it morality wise to what, like, if I was a student, what would I do? And I was like, I don't want this guy using this curse on me. Let me learn it and use it on him, kind of thing. But yeah, so that's how I played it. Was what would I do if I was in that situation? But I do think morality part of it, like you mentioned, Fable. Like I loved the Fable games, and that you could play good or evil, and it did have an impact on how the world around you saw you and reacted to you. So I think that could have enhanced the experience, but I'm okay with it not being there.
I think another part of the morality is not just the curses, but also like pretty much every interaction you have. And I was talking about this with somebody last night, but pretty much every interaction you have an option of kind of like a nice guy answer or a nice girl answer, depending on what you're playing as. But you have the nice answer or the kind of a jerk answer. But in reality, it's like, the questions are, or the answers are kind of like, yes, I'll do that for you. Or I hate you, but I'll do that for you. And like, there's really no consequence to which way you answer. It's more of just a complete role play.
Give me money.
Right. Yeah, I'll do it if you give me money. You get a little more money, I guess.
God. But... And there was that girl, that Slytherin girl that wanted you to go die for that heirloom. I hated her. So I was a dick to her.
So my thoughts on the unforgivable curses, I'm probably thinking about this way too deeply. I'm curious because they're the unforgivable curses. Yet in the game, we see a flashback of a professor using it for good. And that's the way I always thought about it was it's, I don't know, not to be political or anything, but it's like guns do different things in the hands of different people. They can protect and they can also do really bad things. And that's how I felt about learning these curses. Now, torturing somebody or taking over their mind, maybe a little different. But as far as the killing curse, I thought, well, I want to learn this because I'm going to use it against bad people. Now, of course, there's the argument with Sebastian where he's
still listening.
He kills his. Oh, you're good. He kills his uncle, and he was like, I was defending myself, right? But it's like, okay, but there are probably other ways that you could have defended yourself that didn't involve fucking killing him. You probably could have like knocked him out or something. But so to me, I was like, yeah, I definitely want to learn these curses for sure. And dude. And we'll get into combat here next. But when there's an ability where if you, anyone who's cursed and then you use Avada Kedavra on them, it will kill everyone who's cursed. So when you're doing the combat arenas, you can clear an entire trial or whatever, or in one go if you are able to curse everybody. And it's awesome. It's like a very fun late game kind of cheesy thing to do. So speaking of actual combat, I want to read 2 questions back to back to kind of frame our mindset with this. First from Michael Buffle, who says, hey, everyone, I was not expecting the combat to be as good as it was. What are aspects of the combat you enjoyed, and what do you think can be improved upon for a potential sequel? And then also Michael Centeno, who says, hello, Kara, Ben, and Dustin. Hogwarts has been an amazing experience, but I must say the spell combat is what stuck out to me the most. And I was wondering what spell combinations you liked using. My favorite was using Accio, is this Glacius? I'm trying to remember. Glacius. I knew I wasn't going to get it right. And then Incendio. What was very helpful when there was enemies surrounding you. And I got to say, this was another really shocking part of this game and something that even the day that I bought it, I thought this game's going to be cool. The world's going to be cool, but combat might be kind of lame. And then I realized as I was playing, wow, there's so many unique combos. This is like a combo driven RPG where you have to think about like, okay, I'm going to launch someone up in the air. I'm going to slam them on the ground, or I'm going to freeze someone and then I'm going to slice them up. There's just so many unique ways that you can basically, to do combat. And so Kara, I'll throw this one to you. How did you feel about your spell combat abilities?
I thought that the combat was very satisfying. I kind of had that same idea as you. Like, okay, this is like, I don't know how the battle system in this is going to do, but joke's on me. They did great.
Yeah.
But I think one of my favorite combos I did was the Crucio curse, and then having the other curse that I can't remember, the one that makes that you control the other guys.
Yeah, I don't remember.
I can't remember the name of it. And then oh gosh. And then like they said in that question, the Accio, then Glacius, then Defendo to slice them was really satisfying.
Yeah. Dude, there's just so many I was finding out new combinations in my last few
Constantly.
hours playing this game. So Ben, what kind of combos were you pulling out to just eviscerate some goblins?
My main, like my primary spell slots were all the red ones. I really like the fire, the more explosive ones. So I would hit them with one of those and then swap over to like Flipendo or whatever to like spin them upside down and then slam them into the ground. I don't remember the names of any of the spells, sorry. But except for the evil ones, which I remember those. But
yeah,
they usually...
A Slytherin would remember.
Yeah, a Slytherin would. That makes sense. But so I just like lighting stuff on fire and then hitting them again. And I will say that aside from just the combos, the main, like just your main attack, just R2, whatever it is not only satisfying, but pretty effective as well in that, when you hit somebody with that after you've hit them with another spell, like it does significantly increase damage. And so just honestly, for me, it was like using one or two spells on someone and then just finishing them off with the main attack was really, I thought very effective for me.
Yeah. I just thought of one critical aspect to the spell system. It's not even necessarily a problem with the combat spells, is that so as you're playing the game, you unlock different like sets. You can have up to 4. And I don't like that these are shared amongst combat and utility.
Yes.
Because particularly, I always felt that I needed to have the utility ones that took up an entire slot, right? Like your ability, the flashlight one, you're the one that fixes stuff. Those always needed to stay in their own. Now, I think I could have probably used another one so my 3 other ones all for combat. But I also, at the same time, if you want to do room of requirement stuff, that also has its own set of spells that uses that real estate. And so I don't really know what the solution is. Maybe that's just the room of requirement. One solution, I guess, is that when you walk in that room, you don't need to do any combat spells. In fact, you only really need those main 4. I think it's 4 for the room of requirement. So just take away your access to do combat. You don't need to do it. And then have those 4 just for that room, which I realize now, I totally don't have any questions about the room of requirement, which I think
crazy.
Is so essential. I realize now, I don't think anyone even, maybe someone wrote in, maybe I'm just was a doof and didn't realize, but let's talk about the room of requirement for a minute.
Real quick on the combat, I just wanted to say the only real critical piece I have on that is that even though the parry mechanic is incredibly satisfying, and I love how like you reciprocate with a spell, I felt like, and maybe this was just for the accessibility, I felt like the blocking mechanic was way, way, way too forgiving. There were times when I missed it. Yeah. There were times when I missed it by seconds. Sometimes it felt like, and I would still get the block and the retaliation. So that was my only comment there. But as far as the room of requirement, first of all, the whole thing is, no worries. The whole thing was really cool. And I love the fact that, I don't know, I was, 20 plus hours into the game before I started unlocking the vivariums or whatever they were called, where you put all your animals. And just the fact that I was like, I'm this far into the game and I'm unlocking new mechanics again. And that was really cool. The room of requirement in general is really cool, but I felt like the highlight of that was being able to, take care of the animals and breed them and everything. And just the fact that that's not like an immediate thing you get to do. That's something that you progress into that far into the game was really cool to me, for sure.
Yeah. Kara, how did you feel about the room of requirement? Obviously, it's kind of shocking how much depth there is. It kept expanding. How'd you feel about it?
Oh my gosh. I feel like they handled it really well. It's like you have a sim game inside of a combat game. Like, I didn't expect them to do so well with the taking care of the creatures and adding that entire level of customization into the room of requirement that you could do. I mean, you were going around and finding all these little collectibles that you could put up on the walls and all the decorations. And I thought that was really fascinating. I think I really loved the creature care portion of it. I thought that was really interesting. just being able to be like, oh my gosh, I caught a phoenix and I can go pet that phoenix.
Right.
And I did like the shiny aspect of it.
Yeah.
I didn't expect there to be a kind of like a rare shiny version of each of the creatures. Because the first one I found was a shiny thestral.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like this beautiful, like crystal blue color. And I was like, what the heck? Like that is so cool. Like they added just a whole other layer of depth to this game with just within the room of requirement with Deke and with the potion making and the ability to customize the traits on your armor and then you've got like the upgrade system, which you use. I mean, you upgrade and use the traits by using it. It adds a reason to have these creatures in there, which I thought was good. They utilized that very well. They made it kind of go together really well.
Mm-hmm.
My brain is dead today.
Oh, no, you're good.
They coalesced very well.
Oh, good. I don't want to cut you off.
I loved it. But I had another question for you guys regarding combat.
Okay,
I wanted your opinion. What was your favorite animation for the Ancient Magic Ultimate?
I think the one where you cast the ancient magic and they shrink and you stomp on them. I think that was my favorite.
Is that Spider exclusive or
it might be? Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I don't know. There's so many good ones. I have to go with the most dramatic, over the top when you call down a lightning bolt from the sky like you're Thor. It's one of those that if you think about it too much, you're like, this might be too much. Like, this is kind of silly, but it's okay because it's so awesome when it happens. You're like, okay, whatever. I'm cool with it. So I have to say that for sure.
I like the chicken.
Oh yeah. The chicken is the chicken
and the squish and the spider were my favorites.
Yeah. Both of those are fantastic. There's some other ones too. I know they mentioned like, well, no, I guess it's when you use the transfiguration spell where you turn people into
the bombs.
Yeah, the bombs, which isn't quite the same thing. But the one thing I'll say about the Room of Requirement is this is my headcanon of real life, I guess, is that I imagine the game director or someone at Avalanche, they have a history of making Disney Infinity, which is famous for its toy box mode. Now they're making this Harry Potter game. And like, I imagine someone laying in bed and like a light bulb, like, bing. It's like the Room of Requirement is the toy box mode for this game. And it makes it's like they couldn't ask for a better lore reason to include something that they're already so good at in people having these customizable spaces in the game. And it's shocking how good it is. And I will say the thing that I really appreciate is that you are forced at the beginning to like set it up and do it. But after that, for the most part, if you don't want to touch it, you don't have to. It's kind of like take it or leave it. Or you can really focus on it for a while and then forget about it for a long time. It's not the Room of Requirement is not required overall for the game, which I thought was cool because I know that some people wouldn't necessarily be into that. But I know for me, I was, at least at first, I was obsessively going and like changing every wall and thinking and mapping stuff out. Eventually, because it kept adding more and more space, I was like, okay, I'm going to spend too much time like organizing every aspect of this place. So I'm not going to.
Did you have a favorite biome?
Oh, so I was mixing the biomes. Particularly, I was doing the more earthy type biome for the ceilings to get a lot of like natural light in.
I was talking about like for the terrariums.
The vivariums,
oh, those.
Yeah, the vivariums.
It's got to be the spooky one.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can't remember what it's called.
I think you get it after you unlock the thestrals.
Yeah.
After you capture the first thestral, yeah.
I like that because I was like, I got to put all my nasty boys in here and they can hang out. And
Thestral, the toads.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. They can just hang out and be nasty in peace. And I like that about them, just chilling.
Did you get into the breeding?
Yeah. I was about to say you can make the breeding is a kind of an interesting element too. And I love, you can see the little baby versions.
Mm-hmm.
It's so, even the baby thestral, I was like, this is so cute. I love this. So
they were so cute.
Absolutely incredible job.
Speaking of the Thestrals, real quick, just a nice touch that I think this is one of those things that you don't understand unless you know the Harry Potter universe before this game, is that at the beginning of the game, like you immediately, in the opening cutscene, basically you see somebody die, and then that Thestral pops into view like you didn't see it before, and now you do all of a sudden. Mm-hmm. I really like that touch where it was like, oh, wow, okay, yeah, that's how we're flying right now. I knew that, but it didn't really occur to me until it just like somebody dies and you're able to see it all of a sudden. But that was a nice touch. That
was a really nice touch, and also bold that within the first 5 minutes, someone fucking gets eaten by a dragon.
By a dragon!
Initially, because I didn't realize, like I saw the Thestrals, and it wasn't until later I realized it, but I thought, did that guy actually die?
Yeah.
I was like, oh yeah, he's just
he
dead.
Got nommed.
Yeah.
He got eaten.
So too bad for that guy.
Yeah.
Snack.
But so one other thing, as we were talking about Thestrals, and I think this is an interesting question to bring up. Surprising, we're already an hour and 15 into this, so we'll probably just go with a few more questions here. But Michael Granger says, "Hiya, Muggles. Got to ask what you thought of the mount system in the game, in particular for flying mounts. I love the fact that it's in there, but I found I never used them as much as they could be upgraded, like the broom could, and were therefore slower. Just wondering if you lot felt the same, or had any thoughts. Much love, Michael." So yeah, there's a few different mounts in this game. Obviously, the broom we talked about, but also you can ride the hippogriff or the thestral, and then you get the big boy at the end too. And I tend to agree with Michael here that the first time you ride the hippogriff is an amazing moment.
Beautiful.
It's an unforgettable moment. But later in the game, when I'm trying to get somewhere, it's not my first choice.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I got to use the broom. So Kara, did you feel this way also? And how did you feel riding the hippogriff?
I thought the hippogriff, the quest where you get the hippogriff was awesome. I loved that whole section to where, I don't know if you guys had Natty.
Yep.
I think that was the Natty side quest. That's I love that. I love that whole section with her. But I always went with the broom. The broom was just so much more agile, and you could just go through the haunted forest really well, or the forbidden forest, and it just had a lot more dexterity that I thought was a little bit more satisfying with the traversal of the world.
Ben, how'd you feel about now? And also, I want to ask, hippogriff or thestral when you were later? Like, did you try them both out? Thestral?
Yeah. Okay. I tried both of them, and definitely the thestral, just because, like, why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
But I definitely went with the broom more often, or actually almost all the time, simply because it was faster. And people complain about that line about off on another adventure, are we? Like, I didn't get that line very much because I may have only fast traveled like a dozen times in the whole game. Because I just loved the fact that you could fly around literally from one side of the map to the other and never have an interruption. So for me, I definitely picked the broom a lot of times. And some people complain that the boost on it runs out too quick, and therefore that the other mounts are faster. And I think that's true. But one of the mechanics I found by accident, I don't know if it's explained, is if you fly close enough to the ground, you can hold in that boost the whole time and you don't lose the meter. Like, the meter doesn't go down. If you fly up further in the air, it does. Like, it'll deplete, and then you have to wait for it to ramp back up. But so the broom was always way, way, way faster for me. And even though I wanted to not fast travel and wanted to just travel normally, I definitely utilized the broom just for the pure speed, even though, it got me there faster, but I still got to see everything every time.
Yeah. It's, I love that they had the multiple options. It almost felt like they didn't need to necessarily do that. Like, they probably were just fine with a broom and maybe a hippogriff scene, but they really went out and it's like, hey, you can collect these, you can breed them, you can have all different types. And again, it's just, I think the overall thing, and I've repeated it multiple times, I know this is kind of the resounding thing with this game, is just the level of attention to detail and really focusing on giving Potter fans this like fantasy video game where it's like you get to live out these moments that you see in the movie, but it's not just doing the movie. It's like your own, experience in the world, which is so cool.
One thing I would have liked to see is having the Phoenix as a mount where you're just it's just like got you by the shoulders.
Yeah.
And you're just going around like in Chamber of Secrets.
Dude, that's, that is, because you do get the Phoenix in the room of requirement. That would have been interesting.
I thought that could have been a little quirky. Because they are supposed to be really strong.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't know. I was going to say DLC, but they already said no. So they can use that Avalanche. That's a free one.
They wouldn't be the first studio to ever say no DLC and then do it anyway. But with the PS4,
due to the overwhelming success, we've decided. You know what I mean?
But right now, like, they're working hard. I'm sure they're working hard on the PS4 and the Switch ports, which I don't know how that's going to work still. But hey, I'm sure they'll figure it out.
I got two more questions two more questions to kind of round out this podcast. We'll first go to the Lord Corgi, which is a fantastic name. As a fan of Harry Potter, this game was a fantastic experience from start to finish. With the game being wildly successful from a sales perspective, what would you like to see in potential DLC? I'm scratching that part out because we already talked about it. Or an inevitable sequel. I'm hoping for everyone's sake that we get some Quidditch up in this bitch ASAP. Well, I don't think that's happening, but I want to talk about a sequel. This game sold a lot of copies, an insane amount of copies, and clearly was...
It's not done yet.
Yeah. It is not.
It still
has the 3 most popular consoles out there that they still haven't released yet. Switch alone, like, you know how crazy Switch collectors are. Like, I'm really curious as to how many copies it's going to sell on Switch.
Yeah. It's going to be crazy. Hopefully, I mean, I'm sure that they know that they're like, man, these versions have to be good. We can't have any kind of controversy like Cyberpunk, again, to mention it, where this game doesn't work. So I'm sure that those delays, I'm sure that Warner Brothers is cool with it.
The Witcher pulled it off for Switch. So I have faith that hopefully that they kind of learned something from The Witcher 3 and saw how you can put a massive game like that onto a cartridge or make it work for a smaller console. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed for them.
Absolutely. It'll be really interesting to see that pan out. I think that like we mentioned, those delays, I think will be helpful kind of getting them past the finish line. But as far as a sequel, I think that I would imagine this is kind of locked in at this point, that anything that sells this well, you got to crank a few more out, kind of not that you want to wring it dry, but I would imagine that a sequel is definitely could be in the works. And I think there's a lot of questions on what this could be. Obviously, you want to do something new and evolve. So do you have it take place in Hogwarts again, but kind of do it a bigger and expanded castle, if that's even possible? Or you could go to an entirely new wizarding school as well, which I think would be my personal choice. Yeah. So Kara,
they mentioned that other school where you don't use wands, where Natty is from.
Yeah.
And they have the whole bunch of people that are like animaguses, and they have that more of a spiritual take on magic. I can't remember where that was.
Is it Uganda, right? Where they're from?
I think it was Uganda.
It's for wherever Natty's from. I don't recall.
Uruguay or Uganda is one of those 2 places. I think having like a South African or an African take on it would be so fascinating, because you think of like voodoo, like think of voodoo, or I guess that's more like Louisiana, but like the witch doctors, or kind of they have that almost like a dark history already there. I think that could be really fascinating to see where Natty is from, and like she talked about going like galloping across the plains with her dad. Like, I thought that was so cool, and I'd love to see something like that.
Yeah. Ben, how are you feeling about a sequel?
I think I agree that a different take on, location would be cool. I feel like even though the main character, the character you play as is a little bit wooden, it would be kind of weird to have a sequel a direct sequel at least, and not use that same character, especially when we think about things like years and everything. Maybe they become an exchange student. I don't know. We've also never seen like the American side of not that we don't have enough games based in the United States, but we've also never seen that side of the wizarding world, whether in the books or the games or the movies. I mean, so that would be interesting. But I think the most likely scenario is that they use Hogwarts again because, first of all, it's so iconic, and second of all, I cannot imagine that game or that location was not the most intensive thing they did in development. And so they're going to want to reuse it most likely. Mm-hmm. So I think that would be the case. I think that, Quidditch is probably essential for a sequel. I do think making it its own, like it's the pitch, its own location, because it needs to be big.
Massive.
It needs to be really big in order to get the right feel for it. That pitch there was not adequate. I mean, you could zip across it on a broom in 5 or 6 seconds, I think, from one end to the other. So I definitely think that that's part of what they need to do. I think having more interaction with the classrooms and other students, not that I'm a fan of like relationship sims necessarily, but I know that that's a big market. I think that's an aspect they can explore more. And, not that you want to be able to like, I'm not saying we necessarily want like the romance option or something like that, but that is kind of the idea, is that being able to have more of those quest lines, or even just, bringing somebody a gift and them endearing them to you, that kind of thing, allowing those relationships to grow a little more. And I think a lot of people did say they missed, I didn't care, but a lot of people said they missed the classroom aspects more, that they wanted more instruction. They wanted to make it more like a sim where you were going to school rather than just like, going a couple miles from the castle and messing up goblins. So I think that those more almost, Japanese RPG oriented experiences, specifically with schools and education, would be interesting. Obviously, this is not a JRPG or anything near it, but something like that where you're getting more in depth into the RPG mechanics and everything, I think would be, now that we know this world, we know the environments, they've got it built, I think working on those systems is a much smaller task. Obviously, it's still huge, but a smaller task than it would have been for this game. And I would say that that's the thing that people enjoy most about the movies and the books, is those relationships, not necessarily combat. And I think that would be big for the games as well.
Yeah. And I think that as much as I think that a new Hogwarts or a new school would be cool, you're right that the Hogwarts was the biggest thing. And I think that this, I guess, a silver lining or a positive look, not that it's overtly negative, but if they are able to reuse a lot of Hogwarts, imagine how much development can go into new places totally on a different map, whether you go to Diagon Alley or, different, maybe you go to a different school for part of the game, or like, man, imagine a Triwizard tournament for the next game.
That would be cool.
That would be so sick.
You see the cup, you see the Goblet of Fire.
Yeah.
So it's around.
Absolutely. So I think there's so many different ways they can do it. So I'm very curious. I think it'll be a while before we hear anything, but it's exciting to think about the opportunities. And again, for Avalanche to be able to have such a big home run is so cool. Now, the final question I have, it's I don't know, it's kind of a loose question, but I wanted to give you guys a chance. If there's anything that I didn't cover, the questions didn't cover, this is a big game. Like, we didn't really talk about Hogsmeade really, or some particular locations like that. So I know it's a little bit open-ended, but if there's anything that you loved in particular or hated, let me know. What are you thinking?
I hated Mr. Moon.
Yeah.
Oh,
I hated Mr. Moon. He was just a little douchebag. his fear of the demiguise, and then you find out that he was this bully, and you're like, man, I hate you even more. Like, he's like going out and he's like, oh, well, I'm going to have you do my dirty work for me because I'm terrified of these things, but I'm going to get you into these locked rooms that I'm going to teach you how to lock picks. So you're going to be the one to get in trouble if something happens.
Yeah.
But then you find out he's a bully, and I hated him.
I like that there's just okay, I agree with you that he's scummy, but I think it's funny that this role of the Hogwarts caretaker means that there's something off about you. Thinking about Filch in the main series, that he's like this weirdo guy that is just kind of like this janitor of the school.
But did you ever read his notes?
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever read them? He's like, this school couldn't go if I can't go a day or all this school would fall apart.
Yeah.
Like, he's so full of himself.
Yeah. And I love the fact that he's like this alcoholic that's like going and getting in fights and stuff in Hogsmeade is very funny. But Ben, any other random thoughts?
I had a couple things earlier. I think we touched on most of them. I think that another aspect that would be fun, and this kind of wraps into your question here, and also the sequel aspect, is looking more at the outside world, as far as like how the outside world views magic and Hogwarts and stuff like that. Like, you don't really get. I mean, this person is a fifth year coming into Hogwarts. We have no idea about their experience or their outside, how they view magic or anything like that. And not necessarily doing that with this character, but in the movies and the books, we see more of the outside world and how it acts around it. And this is, in the past, this is 100 plus years before the world we know already. So just seeing how it'd be even more strange for magic to exist at that time, I think. So just seeing how that actually plays in a little bit more, and I think that allows for some more interesting storylines, as well as some. I didn't really love the stealth parts of the game, to be honest. I'm not a big stealth. I used to be a big stealth enjoyer. I'm not anymore. But I think that opens up another gameplay mechanic that could be more interesting, other than just sneaking up on enemies, like actually snooping around. So that's a part that I thought was missing, and I think that would be additive in a good way for the game.
You talk about like the sneaking like into the restricted section?
Yes and no. I didn't. There were narrative parts of that I didn't like, because like you go into the restricted section the first time, you got to sneak around like crazy. Then you can just go back anytime you want. Go back. The same with the first quest with Moon. Like you're just you just have to sneak in there, and if you get caught, you basically have to go back and start over. But then after that, you're just like, oh, I'll just run in here, no problem. So there were a couple little things like that didn't work for me. I had to do some mental gymnastics to get over them, suspend some disbelief, which is fine. But I think that those weren't my most enjoyable parts of the game. But I think if you're dealing with stuff that's like outside of the world of magic, that could be fun.
Yeah, I agree. The problem for me with stealth was that you would do it, but you didn't get rewarded for it. Like I wanted to get combat I can't remember when you're doing the collection where you have to do specific tasks during combat.
The challenges.
The challenges, yeah, you can't do them if you're doing stealth. So I'm like, yeah, I'm going balls to the wall every time, blowing people up to get those. So I agree. But that's about it for our Hogwarts Legacy Spoilercast. We covered a lot.
One thing I will touch on.
Oh, yeah.
If you haven't had the chance to look at this book, this is the art book, and it just goes so in depth for everything. It's just so good. It's so good. Like if you have the chance or you find it, if you enjoyed the game and you're itching for more, the book it's good. It's a really good art book.
Nice.
I love art books.
Mm-hmm.
I have like the Persona one, and I have a Cuphead one and Bloodborne and stuff. So
yes,
it's good to know.
I'm art book fanatic over here. So this was a no-brainer for me. And it exceeded my expectations on the content within it too.
And you said on sale recently already too.
Yeah, I got it for like $32, I think. Yeah. Normally, like I saw it at Books A Million last like a couple weeks ago for $50. So I got it for like $20 off on Amazon.
Yeah.
It's on Amazon for $40 right now.
Oh.
Hey, that's not too bad.
Yeah.
Not too bad. So Kara, let's stick with you. First of all, thank you so much for joining us. It was awesome to just have you on to discuss the game. And so, as I mentioned earlier, you're doing some streaming. So go ahead, plug it all. Let the people know what you're doing.
Oh, goodness. Okay, so I have been streaming most weekdays, Monday through Friday from noon to like 5 Eastern. Twitch.tv/Kara Lynne is where you can find me. That's kind of been my main thing. Right now, I am going through my first experience with Final Fantasy VII. I'm playing the remake of it. I've loved the Final Fantasy series. Like, I remember playing 8 and 9 back in the day on my original PlayStation. So the love is there. I just had never touched 7 for some reason. So I'm already very emotionally invested in this game. So yeah, you can find me there. I am Kara Lynne 0326 on Twitter. And yeah, I've absolutely loved being able to jump back on here and chat with you guys and nerd out about the Potterverse and in Hogwarts Legacy. Like, I've had a really great time chatting with you guys and getting to talk to other people who were as excited about the game as I was.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was great having you on. We'll have to figure out other games in the future that we can include you in on some Spoilercast.
Always down.
Also, you mentioned your links, but I'm going to make sure that they'll be in the description of the video and on the Patreon post. You can go give Kara a follow and maybe even a subscription if you're feeling crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Ben, thank you, of course, for joining me. And Ben, I know you don't normally plug stuff on our show, but I'm the host. I'm going to ask you, please plug your stuff. You work for us, of course. You work for Last Stand, but you do some other stuff. Tell me about it.
Maybe you work for me. Remember, I'm the executive producer now.
Oh, that's true. That's true.
Oh.
But I got a
CEO
promotion
now,
to CEO the
yeah.
other day on a show. So it's up in the air. But Ben, tell me what you're doing.
Yeah. Well, I do a little bit of streaming. I've started a YouTube channel now where I do just right now. I just do one video a week because I'm also have a job. So, things are tight. But best place is Ben Smith 2588 on Twitter or Ben is Handsome on YouTube. And we'll see you there.
Awesome.
You know where to find me. You people know where to find me. Of course.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for joining me. Of course, this has been awesome. It flew by so fast. And thank you, of course, to our listeners and our supporters on Patreon who make this all possible. We'll be back soon with more Spoilercasts, review discussions, episodes of shows, and all that good stuff. You know what's up. So thank you, guys. We'll see you next time.
Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is a product and trademark of Last Stand Media and Collins Last Stand LLC, and is proudly recorded in the USA. The show is conceived by, is written by, and is directed by me, Colin Moriarty. My co-hosts are Chris Raygun Maldonado and Dustin Furman. The show is produced by executive producer Dustin Furman. It's edited by associate producer Ben Smith. All of Last Stand's theme music is by my best friend, Ramon Narvaez. As you know, all of Last Stand shows, including Sacred Symbols, are fan-funded on Patreon at patreon.com/laststandmedia. The following names are at the producer level on Patreon, our highest tier, and we're grateful for your thoughtful and kind contributions to our independent endeavor. Thank you.